Hello, everyone. I was already introduced, so I won't go through that stuff in detail. We have a limited time, and I have the bad habit of speaking a lot and taking a lot of time, so I will rush through some of the first slides. Landing a level design job in the industry has never been easy, but to be completely honest, when I was landing my first job, it was way easier, at least in Bulgaria, than it is right now. It's due to various reasons, but currently I think the most obvious one is the remote work, which made things for designers with experience that already have a portfolio of titles they've worked on easier, and they have like lots of options out there. They can basically work for any studio, no matter the location in the world. But for juniors, it's more difficult right now, or starting an internship somewhere. And that's largely due to people not being in the offices. And it's always easier when you're starting something new, like in this case, a level design job, to have people around you that would help you with advice and so on. And so this, unfortunately, made the start of a level designer right now a bit more difficult, but that's why we're here. So this is how we'll talk, and I have a bunch of advice which would hopefully prepare you well if you're really serious about getting a job as a level designer. So this is not a checklist you have to go through. This is a list of like 15 advice, as you see, that I'm pretty sure that if you put the hard work and follow most of them, not all of them, you would really seriously increase your chances of having the option to join a studio. So use it as a guideline. There's things that I have missed here, some on purpose, some mostly because of the lack of time, some because they're outside of my knowledge. So I'm pretty sure each one of you would know of other tricks, maybe we'll speak during the Q&A, that could help you, and we can add to this list so that you have an even bigger chance of being prepared for interviews and tests. So about me, I won't go through this in detail. I was already introduced. So yeah, I have more than 11 years of industry experience right now. Currently working at Flying Wild Hog. We just shipped Shadow Warrior 3, on which I worked. And now Evo West is just about to release on the 22nd of November. I wasn't part of this project, but I'm really looking forward to it. I went through a couple of studios in my career. The most notable ones for like larger periods of time were Ubisoft Sofia, and later CD Projekt Red, and now Flying Wild Hog, as mentioned. Before starting in industry, because I guess this is something that maybe is interesting to you, to be honest, I almost never touched an engine. As I said, it was easier back in the day. I mean, I've modded some games, like the easier stuff, like, you know, 2D, StarCraft, Heroes of Might and Magic maps and stuff like that, which is almost nothing to do with working in 3D and creating layouts and so on. Actually, a lot of level designers, which we'll briefly mention later, start by modding games. So actually, I don't talk about this here a lot, but that's actually one of the sweetest, and I wouldn't call it easy, but one of the best ways to start, even before you start with an engine. It's just important to select a game that you're somewhat familiar with, and most importantly, that has a good tool set. So I'm just going to say Source Engine and Half-Life. This is a very good starting step for many people, but there's many others out there. Like actually, fun trivia about CD Projekt Red. I don't know how much of it is, I don't know the details. I wasn't part of the studio back then. But some people there started by modding stuff in, I think it was called Aurora Engine, which is Neverwinter Nights. And actually a lot of the quest designers there and other people started by doing that before like creating The Witcher. So this must give you a hint of, is it a good idea to start by modding games? And yeah, before that, I was working in game journalism, like a lot of projects. The most known were like Gamers Workshop and Games BG. So long story short, my whole life I've been not only playing video games, but trying to actively participate in the industry on one way or another. So yeah, and in game dev, people don't really like journalists, so I don't like to say that out loud too often. But yeah, that's besides the point right now. So yeah, a lot of titles that I was part of, like for shorter or long periods. But let's cut to the chase. So I've created a list, again, use it as a guideline. And note down questions you might have. We'll have Q&A time at the end. So it's super obvious. Like, first thing you need to do is install Unreal Engine. Like, as I said, back in the day, you could have gotten away with in Bulgaria to apply for an interview job and not having experience with Unity or Unreal or CryEngine or one of the more popular ones. Right now, I would say this is the best way to start with. And of course, you can do it with Unity. In many cases, it's actually better. I don't have a lot of experience with Unity, but I would say for the more triple or double A or whatever we call them these days, like the big premium titles, Unreal Engine is more common. So yeah, that's why one of the reasons I would advise people to start with that. There's tons of tutorials. You can start with the basic stuff that's even on Epic's webpage. You can find tons of more stuff. But actually, the first disclaimer I have to make, you have to be very careful when choosing what kind of tutorials to work. When it's about the basic tools and just getting to know the software, you cannot go terribly wrong there. If you search YouTube, if you search the Epic pages, the stuff that's going to pop up right on top is the good stuff in most cases. So just get familiar with the tools. We'll talk more about choosing the type of content you watch later, because unfortunately, level design is still kind of a misunderstood topic for some people. So on YouTube, there's a lot of videos, not specifically about Unreal, but about level design that can show you like speed level design or creating a level that they're called level design, but they're actually level art. And these two subjects have a lot in common, but they're pretty different things. So just be careful with that. Whenever you see people starting to model things, starting to dress locations with art assets and so on, or you have the feeling that, is this actually about the gameplay or is it more about the visuals and aesthetics? Know that this is one of those videos that someone believes he's explaining level design, but that's not really the case. So YouTube is both a curse and a blessing in that regard. Like back in the day, again, the bar was lower, but there wasn't that much materials online. Now there's tons of stuff, but again, you have to be able to filter the good stuff from the bad, because a lot of the content out there might mislead you about what you need to learn and focus on. And what you need to focus on is the smart thing, because even if you sit down right now and spend the next 5 years trying to develop some skills to become a level designer, you might waste a lot of that time doing stuff that's not really the bread and butter of what you need to learn. So starting with Unreal, focus on the basic tools, as said, through the tutorials. Focus on a few specific things in Unreal, because Unreal, this is a giant tool. A lot of, like the indie approach, which many people try to adopt and get scared by the learning curve of Unreal, makes you think about textures, animation, rigging, tons of stuff, which are super hardcore. I cannot do any of that. Like most level designers cannot do any of that. And like becoming a jack of all trades is definitely a big help if you want to be an indie developer. But if you are talking about landing a job at a somewhat normal sized studio, you don't need to do that stuff. You need to work with your gray boxes, with your Lego. You need to know a bit of scripting, like visual scripting, so you don't need to be programmers. We'll talk about this. And that's about it. Unfortunately, the way you get Unreal in the beginning is raw. It's like empty. I mean, Unreal 5 does a bit better job with this. It has Lyra already, which is like similar to the so-called advanced locomotion system, which was one of the most popular frameworks free frameworks, which most people used in the previous Unreal. But the idea is, don't get scared and bogged down by the tons of tools you will see Unreal. You don't need most of that. You might need to do a bit of, not a bit, but a lot of extra stuff on top of level design as you're learning in the beginning. You would very soon drop that as soon as you've established what tools you really need. And these are scaling primitives, editing some basic meshes, like literally super low poly stuff. You don't need to become a 3D artist and sculpt stuff. You just need to be able, out of a bunch of boxes, create something that resembles a car with the proper size, scale, and shape, or something that maybe resembles a house. You don't need to model like a 3D artist. You need to learn to work with the landscape editor. Like, not all studios will require you to work with different terrain editors, but it's always a nice tool. And again, as you're starting to build your portfolio, you would need to learn that. But it's easy. Like it's not a super advanced tool. I mean, you don't need to use the advanced options. It is an advanced tool. Obviously, like content browser and the basic stuff that you need in order just to manage a project on your own, a project for your portfolio, I mean. And blueprints. So this is where the learning curve like really escalates like super fast. This is the first spike in difficulty many people, like many level designers, will encounter. So blueprints is basically the way to implement gameplay in your game. I won't go in details, there's tons of stuff out there. There's tutorials about that, so you just have to figure it out on your own. Like, there's enough tutorials and info. This is where you need to spend a bit more time to be able to implement basic gameplay. You don't need to create hardcore stuff. A lot of the stuff will, if you play your cards right, you would get a good framework. You won't work on inventory systems. You won't be creating and managing like difficult items or like hardcore animations or attaching a gun to an NPC and working and creating like an aiming system. A lot of that's a pitfall. Many level designers start by trying to figure that stuff out. Don't. This is where you waste a lot of time that you don't need to waste. I'll talk about it, just get a good framework. Don't waste your time with that stuff. So yeah, you don't need to know programming, but if you know something about object-based programming, I don't, and I survived somehow, but then again, I've seen in many cases how this kind of holds me back. So I'm by no means like the best level designer out there. Everything I do, I've seen many people that are way better than me in this. So it's not about you getting the best at everything you have here in the list. It's about knowing a bit of everything, because that's what level design is. You're kind of getting everyone else's like work, like art, VFX, programming, and kind of putting it in one place, which is a level and the player experience. So practice the basic tools, learn how to work with them, just freestyle following tutorials. That's enough as a first step, and that's kind of it. Modding tools we've already mentioned. So proceeding with the second advice, and yeah, this is not paid advertising, even though I would advise a couple of specific web pages here. But yeah, you need to find good level design sources. As mentioned, there's tons of stuff out there. You just need to filter the good stuff. So there's YouTube channels like the one mentioned here, Level Design Lobby. It's an ex-colleague of mine, Max Pears. He's right now leading CGMA level design course. So in terms of translating his pretty vast knowledge by now, but in terms of being able to teach people, spread the word, the info about level design, he's one of the best that there is. So that's a channel I advise you to follow. And throughout this channel and around it and the community that Max has built, you can find a lot of other very useful YouTube channels, Discord channels, LinkedIn and Facebook communities, and so on. So you can find lots of websites like Gamma Sutra, for example. It's an old school one, but it's got good info. There's leveldesign.org. There's World of Level Design. There's a lot of stuff you can find right now about game design and level design. And this is vital because, as mentioned, the first step is get the basics of the tools. This is a bit more about a bit about theory and a bit of like professional level designers spreading their workflow and knowledge so that you can actually know what to focus on. There's, again, internet boards, like I think it still exists. There was a board called MapCore, where it was mostly a modding community back in the day, and it's people creating like maps for 3D shooters. But it's a very good place to seek advice at. And advice is one of the key things you would need as you're starting this journey. And you need to become part of this community. Like, the idea is you need to be active. You need to get there, not work in a vacuum, not like hold. This is a common mistake that even experienced designers and developers do, like holding your work until it's good enough, until you're ready to show it. No, like show it, update people regularly, post it on a forum. They would bash you. They would tell you what to fix. We'll talk about getting feedback later, but you need to seek guidance and be part of this community to elevate your chances of actually knowing something about level design. Of course, you need to share your experience as well when you have it. So yeah, the next advice is like, look how professional level designers do it. Again, there's a lot of exposure. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube. There's a lot of websites and portfolios, professional level designers you can find. I mean, it's not as with, let's say, level art or concept art. Like ArtStation has become the common platform for artists. Unfortunately, there is no such thing for level designers. A lot of level designers, myself included, we don't invest in like creating our like personal web space to showcase our work. Usually to start a level designer, as a level designer, to land a job somewhere, you do a test, and that's how you show how good you are. The rest you leave to your CV, which is not the best, but still there are people out there that have their web pages. They've got tons of info on them. Some of them just show some gray box blockouts, which as you get familiar with the tools and you try to create your own blockouts, if you just look at these for comparison, they can give you a hint if you're on the right track or not. But there are other people out there, like the stuff you see at the bottom. It's very pixelated, but it's Matt does level design. It's again a Cyberpunk level designer. He was a lead after I left the studio. So he actually hasn't posted a lot of stuff, but when Cyberpunk released, he opened this web page, shared how he created a couple of levels, like what was the process. It's sort of a post-mortem. So what he failed at, how he built the level, and that's very good information you can get out there. On YouTube, there's also, I'll show it later, making of videos for The Last of Us levels and other stuff, which is pure gold for you to understand how designers think and what you need to focus on when you're building a level. It's very difficult to actually find these websites. That's the tricky part. To be honest, I don't know many. Like Moby Games is maybe one way you can search for stuff, but that's like a lot of manual work. So just open some of the more popular games credits, check out the level design credits there. You'll see 5-10 people and just Google if they have portfolios. That's one way, but it won't give you a good percentage of results. So yeah, that's tricky to find. Check articles, like actually Gamma Sutra, which I mentioned earlier, has a lot of, again, materials created by game designers or level designers. So going back to Unreal Engine, and again, this whole list, this whole guideline, you don't need to follow it in this particular order of steps from 1 to 15. But then again, I've started with the stuff that for me is most important that you start with, and towards the end, I'm going more towards, yeah, you now need to kind of start contacting people and build a network. So you can use it as a guideline for the order you should start with, but a lot of these steps you need to do simultaneously. So yeah, going to Unreal, I mentioned already this, like you need help in terms of tools, assets, and everything. You don't need to do everything out of gray boxes. And as mentioned, you should not ever like try to invest too much time in creating mechanics on your own. I mean, not like simple prototypes, like a player gets a key, brings it to the door, unlocks the door and goes. Like that stuff you need to do as a level designer, but you don't need to do the core mechanics of a game, like camera controls and stuff like that. Just get a good framework. If I have to synthesize everything on this page, is like you need to get a good framework. Advanced locomotion system in Unreal is one of the free ones, which is most commonly used. It's somewhat compatible with other functionality you might want to add to it. So such a framework would give you already like a decent camera, some mechanics like advanced locomotion doesn't have cover mechanics, but it has crouch, it has over-the-shoulder aiming, if I remember correctly. It has simple climbing, not like Assassin's Creed or Uncharted climbing, but good enough. So you have the basics. You don't need more than that. And if you need, again, there's other things you can buy from the marketplace, and then you need to go in a bit more like hardcore blueprint stuff, but it's still doable. And if it's just about connecting different packages you've got from the marketplace, it's worth it. Just don't try to go and follow tons of tutorials to do that stuff on your own. You just waste your time on things that you really shouldn't prioritize. So get some level design starter packs. Framework mentioned, try a blockout tool. There's a few tools that at the first glimpse, they would seem like just you scaling the primitive assets you have in Unreal. But actually, there's blockout tools that allow you to do more stuff like this, like scalable stairs, walls, and other stuff. So they can help speed up your work. Or get a good level design blockout modular kit, like the blocking starter pack I have shown here. It's a quite popular one. The idea is that you would have kind of a modular set from which you build interiors or other stuff, and get some low poly asset packs. Like, again, you don't need to become a designer. That's why you don't need to model your stuff. Maybe some specific things you want to do, create them with it's no longer called BSP brush, like now it's kind of modeling tool. I don't remember the name in Unreal 5. You can do that, but I would advise you to get a couple of free or buy a couple of low poly packs. like seek stuff that's mostly art agnostic, that will allow you to create like both exterior and interior stuff, modern day, medieval age, or whatever you want to do. It's not always achievable, but try to get stuff that would get the job done for most type of projects you want to create. And just use these as placeholders. Like we actually professionally do this. Like when we're starting sometimes projects, sometimes you have an asset team that can help you create a huge library of placeholder assets. That's stuff that comes before art. Art will be replacing all of this later in a typical studio environment. But sometimes we just go ahead, buy a couple of packs, work with them until our asset artists like create our own library so we can throw away the other stuff. The idea is this would really speed up your process. It would make it more fun for you. You would see much faster results when you start creating a level, and that's very important to not get easily demotivated, because if you start building a level from scratch when you have so much things to worry about and learn, whatever help you can get, and that level design starter pack is the help you need, would really help you get way faster and better results. So the next advice, what to start building with. Like, okay, you've prayed up until now, if you're following these steps, like a couple of tutorials, maybe building a small area. I don't know, you're thinking in your head, hey, let's create a house or like a hotel lobby and place some covers for, I don't know, a typical shooter game or whatever, but you're kind of doing it freestyle, and that won't get you very far. So the first step, if you ask me, is don't try to create something on your own entirely. Just rip off a game, like entirely, like literally copy paste a level, recreate it as close as you can to the original one. This for me is a very easy first step that would give you a good idea of a lot of different things. So let's pick up, I don't know, this is the portfolio of a designer, Hussein Mohammadi, which I found online, just stumbled upon his stuff through LinkedIn. He's got amazing stuff. Like if you check his background, worked mostly on mobile studios and other types of games, but it seems that his passion is AAA. So if you go to his webpage, he's created Last of Us levels, Division levels, Assassin's Creed levels, God of War levels, and that's the best way to start with. But as a step before that, again, just play one of those games, like Last of Us, select an area, like not a full level. A full level is a lot of work. Just select one setup, like semi-open, more linear, just a small chunk of gameplay. Play the level a lot of times, take a lot of screenshots, try to reverse engineer, like what was the designer thinking when doing it? Is it more about stealth? Is he forcing you to go into combat? Is he giving the player agency to decide on his own? Like up until now, through following some of the sources I mentioned before, like YouTube, Gamma Sutra, and so on, you should have some very basic knowledge of like how level designers think and what they prioritize. So try to use some of that knowledge and some of the knowledge you have as a gamer and try to reverse engineer the process of the area of your choice that you will be recreating. Think of the enemy positioning and so on, and then literally try to create the same area, just open a pure ref or other software where you can place all of the screenshots you've taken, place them there, and just try to copy it one by one using purely the gray boxes and the LD starter pack I mentioned before, like the placeholder assets and all of that. You don't have to be exactly precise. Like, I don't know, you don't need a house that's used in, let's say, Last of Us, just as a background. You cannot enter it. You don't need to have the absolute same thing. Just get a couple of the low poly houses you have. Just put them there. They're enough to kind of block the player's way. Focus on the stuff that's relevant for gameplay. And if you don't have stuff in your starter pack and the low poly assets that's close enough to the level you're trying to recreate, then do it with gray boxes. A lot of the stuff you would do with just scaling primitives, and that's perfectly fine. Just make sure they somewhat resemble the stuff you're creating. So I don't know if The Last of Us has a couple of parked cars that the player can use for cover and like maybe line of sight breakers, then try to not just put a big block there that's of this size. No, I mean, you can easily build a car out of like scalable boxes in literally 1 minute, no matter how noobish you are with the tools. So just try to go that slight extra step of modeling the stuff. And yeah, just that's it. This would really give you a lot when you try to create that level and when you try to play it assuming you've adopted either Lyra, Advanced Locomotion, or any other more advanced and maybe expensive framework you bought from Marketplace. This would help you, and you need to focus on a couple of things. Yeah, like your level probably won't be crazy fun. It's not about creating this area and having a meaningful objective and the player going through all of the stuff. I mean, it's awesome if you can achieve that, but try to focus first on just the scale of the whole location. Does it make sense? Is the street too wide? Is it too narrow? When you put the other mid-sized and big-sized assets there, like, does it make sense? Like, what, like the relation between, let's say, a house and a truck and an enemy and a street and so on. I mean, does it look like it looks in the game? So try to get these proportions right. Try to get, I mean, if you focus a bit on the art, and you need to know a bit about art. As I said, you don't need to become an artist, but every good level designer has to know a bit about composition, silhouettes, framing things, and so on. Like, whoever designer tells you, no, I focus on gameplay, that's BS. Like, you cannot just get away with that. You need to build a solid foundation for your artist to work with eventually. And to sell your work, when I check like level designers' work and they try to sell their stuff, sure, I focus on gameplay and layout and so on, but whenever these designers know more about art, they sell their skills and craft and portfolio way better to me. I mean, people like pretty things. That there's no way around that. So try to focus a bit on the aesthetics of your level. Metrics is mentioned here. Like, it's a big topic. I don't want to go there. But again, try to make your level playable. Like, when you put objects next to each other, you won't come up with a metric system on your own, but check the proportions again in these games. Like, if they allow the player, how much space do they leave between objects? Don't try to kind of make these false calls for players where something looks like you can go there or climb it and you actually can't, and it's just because the player can jump 2 meters and ledge you've placed is 2.2, so players can never see that. So try to recreate it as close as you can from the games. Usually they have a good visual language that you can follow and figure out that stuff. So yeah, that's really the first step. Like, you need to do this with at least a couple of levels, not even full levels. Again, just separate areas. Do it a few times. Focus on the layout, on the pure world building and a bit of the art as mentioned before. Then try to focus on the other gameplay. I mean, as you're building this layout, of course, think about enemy positions and stuff, but don't focus on the actual implementation of the gameplay. If the player can actually interact with the door and open it, if he needs a key, and let's say in The Last of Us that's a locked door, so maybe first the player needs to go kill an enemy, get the key from there, go unlock the door. Like, don't focus on scripting that stuff at first. Like, if you've advanced enough with blueprints, go ahead, do it. Like, that's way better. Like, you need to learn it at some point. But to not get bogged down in these details at first, just use placeholders. When I say placeholders, I mean for functionality, not just like a placeholder for a beautiful car. You just put a low poly placeholder. No, functionality as well. If this door is locked, place a different color door. Just say, yeah, this one's red because it's locked. Then when you put a static enemy, like even a T-post character there, even if you don't want to go right now and put patrol pass and stuff like that as a first step, just put static enemies. They kind of show the intention that, yeah, there will be guys patrolling there. Put a big key, like a super ugly low poly asset key next to one of the guys and say, yeah, the guys, yeah, like the player is supposed to get that key from him. This is what we call intention. This is kind of a placeholder for functionality. So it's very okay to start with that stuff. I mean, even in tests for like senior level designers, I see a lot of placeholder stuff, and that's very common and it's perfectly fine. So it's up to designers what they want to focus on. So you need to know scripting. You don't need to focus on it a lot until you've nailed down some other things in your levels as a level designer. So yeah, just try to sell the intention. Just do it visually as much as you can. So yeah, repeat it with another area, and that's the thing. And the last bullet point here is a very key advice. Try to pick the framework or the game. I would start with the framework. That's the more difficult thing to choose, like based on your budget, needs, etc. Try to pick a good framework and then try to pick a game that's somewhat close to this. I mean, don't use advanced locomotion system, which is good for maybe creating a game like Uncharted or Assassin's Creed, like look-alike, and then try to do something like, I don't know, like Doom, Eternal, or like, I don't know, something completely different, like a side-scroller platformer, like it just won't work. So keep that in mind, it's very important. Till the end? Oh, so we're not there, okay, yeah. So as I said, I'm going in a lot of detail about a lot of stuff. So then the next step is kind of the normal one you would expect to follow from this. After you've recreated a couple of levels, you just need to build your own stuff. Like, again, pick a type of game that you're familiar with, but this time try to create your own level using, again, all the assets and tools and framework we've talked about. Check some professionals' workflows. Again, if you choose Last of Us, if you go in YouTube, you can actually see level design videos and making of. So again, it's a good cheat codes you can use. Try a game, creating a level for a game that you can find info about. Do your research, get some references for that level, like concept art, Google Street View if you're creating urban locations or whatever. You can get a lot of references there. Just don't try to get in this like blank sheet problem like writer's block. Just get some inspiration for this. You need, of course, to go through the objective, what the gameplay will be about, but again, it's mostly about the layout and a simple like 2 or 3 step objective at first. Don't go hardcore with details. You need to create a bit of documentation. Don't go overboard, just create a decent 2D map and a simple walkthrough that you can explain with a couple of bullet points. When you're checking professionals' portfolios, you have to learn how to create proper documentation, but right now it's not about that. Just create something simple, just enough to unblock you. And yeah, again, absolutely the same as the previous exercise. Focus on layout and the simple gameplay and be prepared to iterate on this a lot. You cannot nail down a level from the first attempt. You would work on it and work on it and work on it and seek feedback and so on. So yeah, this is the most key ingredient of your portfolio. If we have to stop the presentation right now, that's the thing you need to focus on. If you get good at the previous step and this step, and you create a couple of like locations using similar methods to this, then again, it's all about selling yourself. So these are the most important things you need to do. So yeah, I mean, you will be going back to this step. Like no matter if you go to the other steps, no matter how good you are, if you're in month 6 or month 24 of your like goal of chasing your level design dream job, you will be going back to this constantly. You need to go back to it and grind. So just as we mentioned, online sources, get some books. Like there's a lot of good technical literature, like professional books about level design, game design. Of course, focus on the level design, but you can also check some other stuff for game design, architecture, and narrative design. They will be really strong helpers for you. So just try again to get a bit of everything. Focus in engine, watch some videos, bedtime, read 30, 50, whatever, like how much time you have of a book. It would keep you motivated and you will get new knowledge. And you would create a good impression if you're going to interviews that you're going the extra mile and reading some stuff. Build a network. Like this can mean a lot of things for me. If you're at the stage of that you've already created some stuff, go on LinkedIn, create a profile, do it professionally, check some examples of professionals again, and start making connections like other level designers and lead level designers. Just send invites. There's no bad thing. Most people won't decline those. Game designers, most importantly, I would say other aspiring level designers such as yourself. It's very important like to get in touch with such people. You can actually check people that tutor level design at different schools in Europe or around the world. And even more importantly, students at these game universities, because again, a lot of people are very open to sharing their experience and knowledge. So there's a lot of good people out there that will help you with this. So try to create a network. It's not like the Bulgarian thing called shurubajanashtina, so the bad kind of networking, which is like, yeah, I know people, they will help me land a job. No, it's about them helping you get better so that you can land that job. And leave the recruiters for last. I wouldn't kind of waste that bullet right now, because when you start approaching recruiters, they're assuming that you're seeking a job and maybe you are not at this point exactly. So don't start spamming recruiters just yet. So, and because you would be doing this once you've already familiar with some LD tools in Unreal, like then you need to start showcasing your work every now and then, pace it, seek feedback about it, and just show yourself out there. Yeah, that's a kind of a no-brainer. If you have the money, if you can invest, go to an online course. I won't mention bachelor's and master's degrees. That's again, if you can do it, that's awesome. I strongly advise you to do that. I didn't because of various reasons, but right now there's tons of cool stuff online, like CGMA, which I mentioned before, Naughty Dog people that worked on Division, Cyberpunk, other stuff, like great level designers that tutor there. Out of a course like this, 1 year and the hours you've spent on this course can really unlock you and your potential a lot. So it's really worth doing. There's other courses, of course. This is just some of the most famous ones. So you would get knowledge, you would get better skills, you would get to know a lot of people, and the importance of this is not for them that much to help you get a job, even though they might if they see you've got potential, but they would actually show you a professional's workflow. They would help you go from step 1, 2, 3, 5 until you can actually build a level on your own, and they will show you how to do it properly. Because if you go fully kind of indie style, you would acquire a lot of bad habits potentially. So that's very valuable knowledge you can get from these courses. But of course, check the courses you will apply for. I mean, I don't want to bash at anyone or anything, but there's a lot of courses out there that are inviting people that are still to be lecturers, that are still studying at universities and so on. And I'm not saying they cannot teach you good stuff. They can, but I would always pick a course that's being led by a real industry professional that's been doing this for years and years to come. So I would always background check. Don't just rely on an academy's name and just blindly spend your money and enlist in that academy. Find a mentor, like book people on LinkedIn. Hopefully by now with the previous advice, Mapcore, Discord channels and so on, you would know some people. And not a lot of them. Out of 10 people that will tell you, hey man, sorry, I don't have time to help someone like you right now. Sorry, like maybe the 11th person will say, sure, show me your level, I'll give you some feedback. There's always someone there that will be willing to help you. People often underestimate that, and it's a huge help you can get for free actually. Learn to not take the feedback you're gonna get personally. You just have to learn to care about your work, but learn to let it go and be open to change, because this will be happening a lot. It's still happening to me. Like 11 years of doing level design, people bash my level. No, that's not a good level. That's bad. Throw it in the trash bin, create a new one. So you need to understand that and be able to live with that. So yeah, also ask about advice. Don't just book these people like your mentors about how can I create a better level. Ask them how to find a job in the industry. Ask them what are the next steps for you to develop your personal skills. What are you missing? So it's not just the core set of level design skills. It's about you just becoming a professional. We already mentioned portfolios. You've already seen them through the previous steps. Go the extra mile, especially as someone without a background. You don't have a CV and a portfolio background from an industry studio to sell your work. So you need to display your work, do it professionally. Again, check some of the good websites there, provide like documentation for the layouts you've created, provide the references you've used, video playthrough, upload the project files or at least like a playable demo, write even a short like post-mortem of what worked for you, what didn't, and so on. People would actually see the struggles you've had and how you overcame them. And that's important when you're, again, a junior, and it's very difficult for studios to judge what can you do and what maybe you can't. So yeah, quality over quantity. Don't get all the stuff you have there. Like you have a lot of low quality stuff in the beginning while you're still figuring out stuff. Just choose 1 or 2 decent levels. That's enough to start. And you need to prepare for interviews and tests. Like that's a bit tricky, but again, seek the advice from other people, like from people that already applied to interviews, they failed, from level designers in the industry, what are typical questions, what are typical tests they might give you. They can share a lot of information without breaking any NDA, and you need to practice about this. Like you've so far learned how to create levels, you've put some time constraints, like you need to put, by the way, time constraints and deadlines on everything you do, otherwise you won't get anything done, ever. But now you need to start trying to do this in very short bursts, like typical tests are 2, 3, 4, 5 days. So now you need to, hey, what can I do in 5 days? So don't let the first or fifth test that's being sent your way for a junior position surprise you. Be prepared to work with the pressure of having a very short deadline and how much stuff you can deliver, how to prioritize work, and so on. And yeah, pick different teams. I would personally limit the amount of studios I would apply for, like different genres of games. I wouldn't apply for doing platformers, racing games, RPGs. Like, figure out what you want to do. You might not have all the options in the world as a aspiring level designer, but for me at least, like sending 300 CVs out there, just it won't work. Like, I wouldn't approach it in this way. And this is super obvious, but you need to play games now as not only as a gamer, but as an aspiring level designer. So with the knowledge you would be acquiring while going through the previous steps, try to play them as a designer, try to reverse engineer some bits, take screenshots of layouts, try to figure out why this layout was created like this, why the experience from second to minute was created by this. And when you're doing your levels, try to apply some of the knowledge that you've gained when playing games. So, I mean, we still do it as professionals, years in the industry, and we learn stuff. So you will be learning from this as well. I mentioned the breakdowns, making of videos. There's a lot of stuff out there right now in the form of articles and ideally YouTube videos, like the Naughty Dog stuff here. So yeah, watch those videos, place those levels simultaneously while watching the video, and try to see how things are done. This is invaluable info you can get there. And applying for the LD jobs, I mentioned it before, you just have to be prepared. This can be a very long and tiring process. I cannot be a hypocrite and speak about this because I had an easy way like 11 years ago. I had a lot of luck, which unfortunately is always part of that. But the thing is, I've spoken to a lot of people that are trying to land their first internship or like a junior level designer job. So you have to be patient. You have to learn to live with rejection. A lot of times you will be rejected because you lack experience, obviously, and maybe some skills, but a lot of times it's just bad timing. Like, it depends how many people and how good people applied right now. So you need to be patient with this and work constantly, and you would eventually get there. Again, I would filter the studios I would apply at, not only, I don't know, the biggest or best, but in the types of games you choose. I just don't believe like a person is just to land this level design job should apply to almost everything out there. And again, if you focus on working, like creating your levels for third person or first person shooters / action adventures, try to focus on applying on not vastly different studios than this. And yeah, I'm repeating some stuff, but that's on purpose. Like, again, seek advice from LDs and people in the industry while applying at studios as well. Figure out, let them help you what you're doing wrong and what you can do different. And ask for feedback. Unfortunately, studios won't always give you feedback why you've been rejected. They might not get back to you at all. That's the way it is. It sucks. But try to ask for that. Like, send an email. Hey, sorry to bother you, but I would really appreciate if you can send me feedback on why I failed. Is it my portfolio? Is it my level? Was it the interview? So this would be very valuable information, which again, later you can run through your network and people can give you advice. And yeah, the kind of workaround, like start as a QA. Just don't get stuck there. Like if you really, I mean, it's a great job, but if you want to be a level designer, starting as a QA and later like getting all the knowledge you can in the studio you're working at, and becoming a level designer is a good way to do it. And the bottom line after all this is the last kind of advice, is hard work. Like, you just can't leave it to luck. I just don't believe that any of the people here or anyone watching this video, if they go through all of these steps and maybe even more, and do this for 6, 12 months, 2 years if needed, no matter if they have a job and they just do it in their spare time, which is very difficult, but no one said it's gonna be easy. Or if you have like, I don't know, you're a student and you have maybe more time, or you're just financially secure and you can allow yourself to work on this for 1 year, just hard work and consistency, just repeating the steps over and over again, but seeking more and more advice and getting better, like you would eventually get there. And you just need to spend the hours. Like, you cannot just create 1 or 2 levels and be there, like, I don't know, 50, 100 hours and seek your first job. Like, you need to invest a lot more than that. You can get away with a little work, but you would need a lot of work, a lot of luck, connections, and I don't know. So most people wouldn't have the luxury of this. So you just have to put in the hard work. It can take you 2 or 3 years even sometimes. But then again, this is a trade that you might be doing for your full life. That's why I believe investing in an online course, buying some resources from on your marketplace if you cannot find them free, and investing the time, which is your most kind of precious thing right now, is totally worth it. Just think of it like this, like you could be working in this industry for like 20, 30 years, and it's a job that I still love doing, 11 years and on and counting. So I would say it's worth it. And yeah, just work smart. Like this is what this presentation is about. Like I'm sure you guys would have been going through many of these steps even if I didn't mention them. But once you have the chance to watch this again online or check the presentation, focus on some of the stuff like the frameworks, what to do, what not to do, because you can just get lost out there on your own, and ask people. That these are the two key things. Just work smart and seek advice. So thank you. Sorry, this was all very long.
Anyone has questions? Questions? Okay. I have a question as well, but it'll be the last one.
Yeah, sorry for not leaving a lot of time for the Q&A.
Hi. So are there genres that are inherently better, or either easier to start with, or genres that give you more bang for your buck time-wise when you spend the time making levels, when making your first designs, or have the sophisticated engines and the pre-made frameworks largely solve that?
Well, I wouldn't say solved. There are differences. There's easier stuff to start with, but not necessarily the best stuff to start with. I mean, there's a reason why out there's tons of developers doing like the so-called walking simulators, because they almost have no gameplay except for one blueprint interacting with another, like for open a door or acquiring an item. That's the easiest stuff to start with, but that's not really level design at the end of the day. I mean, there's not a lot to it. So in this particular case, when it's about you showing that you're a good designer, I would just pick one of the mainstream genres because you just broaden your chances of getting a job. Just choose doesn't like first or third person perspective, doesn't matter that much, maybe third person, and just do a generic action adventure game. Like there's good frameworks about that, tons of resources you can use. That's all. This would make your life easier. And again, it would open the most studios out there in the market, because if you start designing turn-based strategies or racing games or something else, or like a very specific RPG, it might be easier in some ways, but it would really limit the opportunities you would have in the industry. So yeah, I don't know if this answers the question.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Very simple one. Where can we get access to the presentation for all that information?
Okay. Yeah, those guys. Yeah, it's gonna be uploaded there. They'll give you information, I believe. So.
Okay. Anyone else? No. Последний.
Yeah. So what would be the difference when creating a video game, either if it's a 3D or 2D? Is it easier on 2D or is it almost the same?
If I understand correctly, you're asking 2D versus 3D. Is there a difference when you start doing it? Or?
Which one would be easier and what is better to start with?
Well, kind of similar to the first question that was asked. Like, I mean, for sure, creating a 2D game can be easier. Again, depends on the game. If you want to create a hardcore Metroidvania game, it might not be easy. Like design-wise, it might be actually very difficult. But again, because of the limited like planes and so on, I mean, obviously you have to take care about a lot less stuff. So it's a way to start. But if I'm starting with a 2D game, that means that that's really what I want to do, and I would be seeking work later in a studio that focuses on 2D games. So again, this would be very limited right now. So again, if we're talking about semi-big, like, I don't know, AA studios, like premium titles, etc., I would start with 3D. It's more difficult for sure, but again, it gives you way more opportunities. So you really just have to know what you're going for. There's no wrong or like best answer to this.
Okay, anyone else? So my question, I'm not sure if you're allowed to answer me, but after Evil West, are you planning to do another hardcore FPS or just an FPS title?
Yeah, unfortunately, I cannot talk about this. Like, we'll be working on something cool, that's for sure, but I can't say anything about genre. And to be honest, these things change throughout development. So even if I were to tell you something now, break my NDA, end up in jail, it won't do you much good in the long run, probably.
Okay, thank you. Last questions? Anyone? Okay.
Okay, thank you, Yasen.
Thanks.